Hi, Heidi. We are good to go when you are, okay?
Perfect. Are you still wanting to take the items in opposite order?
Yes, they are actually put correctly on the
Oh,
agenda,
perfect.
so you don't need to switch anything around.
All right, sounds great. Um, let's see. How many people do we have right now? I think we're still a lot of people short. Maybe we'll give it like 2 minutes and then start. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Just a reminder that we're still meeting virtually and that people can call in to attend the meeting or watch it on the live stream or on YouTube. So, Karina, do you want to go ahead and call roll?
Yes, no problem. Let me just get that up real quick. Okay. Anderson,
He's absent.
Becerra, absent. Contos,
Here.
Harp, absent. Hess,
Present.
Jones,
Present.
Merritt, absent. Ramos, absent. Cheryl, absent. Beseca,
Present.
Von Mossberg,
Here.
West.
I'm here. Do we have 6? Is that right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have a quorum. So we'll go ahead and approve.
We actually don't have a
We
quorum.
don't?
No.
Okay, well then we'll
We need one more than one more. So
one more than half. All right, so we'll go ahead and just hold the minutes till the end if we have someone else joining us, and we'll move on to the first item on our agenda, which is the presentation on the implementation of the Conservation and Stewardship Mill Levy, and I'll turn it over to Morgan, I believe.
That's right. Hello,
All right.
everyone. Sorry for the weird light in my office. This is the worst time to do Zoom, I've found, because I get direct light through the windows. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen here. I've got to kind of pop between screens, so I hope that this works. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we can see that.
Oh, wonderful. Always a pleasure to be here. My name is Morgan Valiant. I'm the Ecosystem Services Superintendent. I'm joined by Jeff Gickelhorn, our Conservation Lands Manager. We're going to kind of tag team this presentation today. And I just really wanted to get in front of y'all and let you know how we've been implementing the 2018 Conservation and Stewardship Mill Levy. If you recall, we had a 3-year phased plan to implement these dollars, and we're now at phase 3. So the money is fully being implemented out on the lands. And so we've got a little presentation today to talk about that phased rollout, what benefits we've seen. And then Jeff is going to talk a lot about also about what we've done this year with those additional monies out in the field. So before we get going, a quick history of our Conservation Lands Management Program. A lot of you folks are already aware of this, but the city of Missoula and the county of Missoula, as of 2006, passed several different open space bonds from the 80s all the way through 2018. And overall, that's accounted for about 7,500 acres of conservation in the Missoula urban area and about just under 30,000 acres of conservation in the county. In 2006, the city owned about outright just over 3,000 acres of public natural areas, but there was no really comprehensive management plan for how we would manage these lands. There was no management program, and there was a significant amount of deferred maintenance. It was in 2005 that the county weed district committed some money from the county weed levy as seed money to start a land management program for our city conservation lands. And the city stepped up and added more funds to that pot. And in 2006, the conservation lands program was officially started. It wasn't until 2010 that we actually had a community vision for how we would manage these lands. And some of the big things that came out of the 2010 Conservation Lands Management Plan was we established our primary management goals for all of our properties. We determined that there was 3 different types of properties that would have different types of management goals on each said property. We actually, for the first time ever, documented our trail system and showed the public what our trail system was that we would manage. And then we also set some long-term management and funding goals. Here are the primary management goals that came out of the Conservation Lands Management Plan for our entire system. And these are not in any particular order, but conserve natural and cultural resources, protect and enhance native habitats, and provide outdoor recreational and educational opportunities. As we've grown and started to look at the work we do through different lenses, we have also found that these conservation lands provide significant direct and indirect contributions to our community's well-being. These habitats provide these supporting services. There's regulating services like our clean water and flood regulation, provisioning services, our cultural services. These are ecosystem services. Our lands that we manage do provide a significant amount to our community and to our quality of life here in the Valley. So in 2018, our voters recognized that, and they passed 2 things. They passed the 2018 open space bond, and they passed the 2018 conservation and stewardship mill levy. Now, just a little quick background again on the differences between these 2 things. The open space bond is really about places and infrastructure. So there's $15 million that were in that bond, and it's split evenly between the city and the county. The county is focusing the majority of their dollars towards land conservation, what we've typically done in the past, buying land, buying conservation easements, that kind of stuff. The city in 2018 did something different with their bond, and they decided to focus on both land conservation, which is what we've done in the past 4 bonds, and improvements to city open space. So we're also reinvesting in some of our old open space properties. So doing things like rebuilding the Waterworks Hill Trailhead, reforesting our developed parks, fixing our commuter trail system, providing money for river access through downtown. This bond lasts for 10 years. It's assessed for 10 years. Conservation and stewardship mill levy is really about staffing and stewardship. And so this is the day-to-day operations. This money goes directly towards the Conservation Lands Management Program. In general, that is evened out to approximately $580,000 a year, and it goes directly towards the Conservation Lands Management Program. This money has effectively doubled our conservation lands budget, and that levy is assessed to city residents in perpetuity. So we continue to have that money unless it's repealed by vote by the city electorate. So how has this changed things? This was our conservation lands management budget before passage of the mill levy in fiscal year 19. Bottom line is we had about $475,000 to work with. The majority of that was in staff. We had some supplies. This is just buying the odds and ends, and we had some purchase services. Both of these we would usually exhaust about halfway through the fiscal year. When the mill levy passed, we estimated that we were going to get about that first year in FY20 about $496,000, and we planned a 3-year implementation rollout based on those numbers. In FY20, we were pleased to find out that the mill levy was actually higher, and so the value of 4 mills in actuality in FY20 was about $566,000. Here's where we are today. So those funds are, this is our approved budget right now in FY22 for conservation lands. We're at $822,000 for professional services. We've effectively doubled the amount of people that are doing this work. Our supplies budget has increased by 200%. Our purchase services has increased by almost 200% as well. We've been able to fund different partnerships. We've got a stipend for our Moon Randolph caretakers now. We've got a shared front country ranger with the Forest Service that does works our trail system, spreading the gospel about responsible recreation. We've also brought our internal safety and training coordinator within Parks Operation up to full time to help keep us all safe. And then this year we also are purchasing a small truck. In total, our budget that we're working with in FY22 right now is just over $1 million. We also, as you recall, started an emergency restoration and acquisition fund. And so this year we'll be putting around $97,000 into that fund. So what is that fund? Well, this is something that I have always been incredibly excited about. This is essentially a fund that we can build that will be there as a reserve in case we have a major natural disaster or some large restoration that we need to do. Good example, Mount Sentinel burned right when I got the job back in 2008. We didn't have any money to do any reseeding. We actually had to have literal bake sales, ice cream giveaways, pass the hat to try to buy seed, and then get hundreds of volunteers to spread that seed. It was actually a great project, but it took away from a lot of the other work that we were trying to do. This fund for the first 3 years, FY20 to 22, we were going to put 25% of the mill levy into that fund to build it up. Moving forward, we're going to do about 15% of the mill levy per year. So that's about $75,000 per year. The benefits of this capital outlay budget really allow us to do a few things, and it's kind of earmarked for doing that restoration or emergency acquisition. If we have a property that is in our plan to purchase and our open space bond is exhausted, we've got another pot of money that we can draw from. We also have bonding capacity. We can borrow against this money. And that annual contribution, that fund builds and that balance rolls over and accumulates over time. I'll talk a little bit more about this fund in subsequent slides. So here's how this 3-year implementation worked for the conservation and stewardship mill levy. And I'm speaking a bit in generalities here. No plans ever go off exactly as you planned. And I think the 2020 pandemic definitely changed some of this implementation, but we are fully implemented now. Our first year was really about building capacity. And so that mill levy, that 4 mill fund, was about $566,000. The majority of our purchases in FY20 were really, a lot of them were in capital equipment. We needed to start to build capacity. We knew we were bringing on more staff. We needed to have simple things like trucks for them to drive. We needed to have equipment to do our trail maintenance and our restoration work. So we invested about $114,000 in capital equipment. A big chunk went to operational support. So we really started to build the back of the house. We hired a conservation land specialist to help us with our education, our outreach, our volunteerism, and our grant writing. We hired a accounting technician that's an admin support. We had no admin support before that. We brought that safety training coordinator up to full time. We brought some other staff that were already on up to full time. And then we actually put a sizable chunk in that recovery and acquisition fund. We did about 32% of the mill into the fund that in year 1. Year 2 was really about increasing our maintenance staff. And so bringing on the workers that are going to go out and do a lot of this work. We still had some capital equipment. We basically have some extra machinery that we ended up buying. And we were going to bring on a bunch of maintenance staff in FY21. Unfortunately, the city was under a hiring freeze, and so we were not able to bring in all those staff. So FY21, we're actually operating the entire year with the same staff that we had in FY20 and actually functionally in FY19. So we ended up taking a lot of that extra money that was supposed to go towards salary, and again, putting a large chunk of change into that recovery and acquisition fund and saving it for a rainy day. Year 3, so FY22, this is where we're at right now. The majority of our money is going to hiring all those folks that we were going to hire in 2020 and then hire the other people that were supposed to come on in this year. Our investment in the recovery and acquisition fund is back down to 17% where we planned it to be. We've got a little bit of capital equipment, one more truck that I talked about. In general, that recovery and acquisition fund as of today is about $480,000 that we have set aside for emergency acquisition or restoration. And again, we're going to continue to put in about $75K a year or more into that fund to build it. If we want to look at this in a little slightly different way, this is our budget growth over that 4-year period from pre-passage before the mill levy passed all the way through to today. Green bars are our payroll. That's our workers. Blues are our supplies and materials. Yellow are our purchases or contracted services. And then red is that emergency acquisition fund. So here is where we were before implementing those bond funds. This is how it broke down in FY20, FY21. You can see again, increase in staffing, not much change in our supplies and purchase services. And then now FY22, a little bit more staffing, and then big increases in our supplies and materials and our contracted services. That was the big thing that moved forward this year is our contracting services budget and our supplies and material budget. Well, they doubled this year from FY19 levels. So how's this look from an operational standpoint as far as what people are out there doing the work? This is our staffing plan in 2018 when the mill levy passed. Conservation lands manager, that was me at the time. We had a research and monitoring team, which was basically a 3/4 time research coordinator and a couple intermittent seasonal folks that would come in and help us collect data. We had our maintenance side of the house with a 12-month maintenance technician that was functionally a crew lead with a maintenance tech assistant, a 10-monther, a 9.5-monther, a 7.25-monther working in our greenhouse, and then a couple intermittent staff. And this is where it's at today. Conservation lands manager, Jeff. Here are those shared positions. We are covering about 20% of the salary of our safety training coordinator. We've got that new open space and projects administrator who really helps track our conservation lands projects, also our other open space projects. We've got an entire program support functional work team, and Jeff is really going to talk a lot more about these functional work teams and the work that they do out in the field. This is our conservation land specialist. This person really does help us build capacity both through bringing in external funding, providing educational materials, building capacity through volunteerism. There's our research and monitor coordinator. Not much has changed there. And then there's been significant change within maintenance. We've got 2 functional work teams now, a recreation management team and a natural resource management team. So in general, we've doubled the amount of folks that are out there taking care of your lands. So what has this really meant as far as work in the field? Well, there's been a lot of stuff happening in the last couple of years, and Jeff's going to really get into the nitty-gritty of what we did this year. But I do want to highlight a project that kicked off right in the middle of this implementation plan that I think could have been, was greatly enhanced actually by the Conservation and Stewardship Mill Levy. And that's the removal of the Rattlesnake Dam, the lower intake dam. You guys are very familiar with this project. I've come and I've talked about it before, but I've not really talked about what impact our mill levy had on this project in general. It was a huge project. We were scoping this project in 2017, early 2018, and then it implemented in 2020. That's when we actually tore out the dam, rebuilt the floodplain, moved a lot of concrete, salvaged a lot of historical materials, rebuilt stream channel, created 4 acres of wetlands. We collected from seed, grew and planted over 10,000 native plants, collected over 11,000 willow cuttings, coordinated 184 volunteers for 770 hours in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of people were really happy to get out and plant plants in fall 2020, and did some major trail improvements to make sure that folks of all abilities could reach the site and watch the project happen. One thing that was unique about this project, overall it was just shy of $2 million, and 85% of that money came from grants or outside donations. So not a lot of taxpayer investment in implementing this project. So this is the site now, totally rebuilt. This was this flood year. What were we able to do? Well, in 2020, we didn't have all of our maintenance staff on, but we had a lot of that back of house staff. We had our admin staff. We were able to not only get, but track large federal grants. We've not been able to do that within the Conservation Lands Management Program before. Not that we couldn't get them, we just didn't have capacity to track them. These federal grants have a lot of requirements. We brought in a $716,000 FEMA grant. And, this is definitely I want to say this wasn't just Conservation Lands Management Program. This was a partnership, of course, between CL, Missoula Water, Trout Unlimited, and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We got a $125,000 grant from the DNRC, a bunch of other smaller grants, a bunch of other donations. These 2 grants required about $250,000 of match. We actually tracked $644,000 of match. Our internal admin staff were tracking all CL match, all Missoula Water match, all Trout Unlimited match, all Fish, Wildlife, and Parks match. We greatly increased capacity to not just bring in this money, but to funnel this money through and then provide that outside reporting. In general, of that program match, about $35,000 from the Conservation Lands Management Program in 2020 was from staff working on the site. We had about $51,000 worth of supplies and materials and about $11,000 worth of labor from volunteers. Obviously, these restoration projects, you don't just walk away from them. It takes a few years of maintenance to make sure that everything's on the right trajectory. We are still providing that maintenance through this year and through next year and subsequent years. Some of the other things we're able to do, we had our research specialist on. One of the really cool things, and I don't have, I just grabbed a few snippets of some of the educational materials we got out. We had someone that could create on-site signage and kiosks so that the folks could track this project as it moved. We coordinated a ton of different volunteer outreach. We had a bunch of media. We had a really active, engaged Missoula site. We had, time-lapse photography. We had a bunch of things going on, and having someone to coordinate some of that so that the public, even if they couldn't come out to watch the project, could watch it at home was super important. And it provided an opportunity for folks to connect. Supplies and materials, we built an entire universally compliant trail that got people to site. We fixed trail transitions that used to be really hard to get through with even a stroller, not to mention something like a wheelchair, to get folks up to site. We grew in plant materials alone. We probably shaved $25,000 off of this project just by having our greenhouse technician and the ability to grow these plants in site. So significant cost savings just on the materials alone. We also provided a lot of labor. We had folks ready to go and salvage those historic materials. This is our maintenance tech all roped off, grabbing some historical materials. We had trail machinery ready to go to rebuild that trail, and we had staff that were trained to do it. We had a small crew at the time, but we had folks that could come out and get those plants in the ground on really nasty days like this where volunteers don't typically turn out. We also had a ton of volunteers turn out and had to coordinate that. So we had folks working in evenings and weekends, and having that capacity to do it would not have been possible if we hadn't been partially implemented on the Conservation and Stewardship Mill Levy. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. He's going to talk just a little bit about some of the work that we did this year and have been doing this season now that the mill levy is fully implemented. Thanks, Morgan. I'm going to briefly switch screens here, and we're going to look exactly the same, I think. There we go. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thanks, Morgan. And again, I'm very happy to be here. Jeff Kickelhorn, current Conservation Lands Manager. And I'm going to briefly talk about, again, what we've done this year, really since I've arrived, as well as where we're going and plans we have for further building capacity within the program. So just to remind everybody, the three primary goals of the Conservation Lands Management Program include conserving natural and cultural resources, protecting and enhancing native habitats, and providing outdoor recreational educational opportunities. So how do we build program capacity beyond our current stage? So we're doing that as we speak. This year, when we hired our new staff, we were hiring staff intentionally with complementary skill sets and experience. As Morgan briefly alluded to, we've created functional work teams that allows us to address multiple program needs concurrently rather than working on a single project at a time. Providing focused training and educational opportunities to increase retention and professional growth for our staff. And then also utilizing our increased purchased or contracted services budget to strategically supplement our maintenance crew capacity. And so again, as Morgan mentioned, we have three functional work teams focusing on recreation management, natural resource management, and program support. So our recreation management team is really, focusing on making sure that our citizens have a positive experience on conservation lands. Most users and most Missoula citizens experience conservation lands through our recreation and trail-based opportunities. So the responsibility for this team includes construction and maintenance of all conservation lands recreation infrastructure. This includes all of our trailheads, which is greater than 140 access points at this point, and active trail maintenance, so greater than 100 miles in our current system, as well as posting and maintaining rules and informational signage on all of our properties, again, at access points primarily. This team is composed of a maintenance technician assistant and worker, so a two-person team who have expert level machine experience on trail construction and maintenance, the knowledge of all adopted city trail construction standards, working knowledge of all our known issues within the system, and it's their job to coordinate with nonprofit and agency partners where shared maintenance occurs or when volunteer assistance is needed. A good example of this would be, we have recreational trails that go from city land onto University of Montana land or onto Forest Service land adjacent. Several of the recent projects you may be aware of include the opening of the Mount Dean Stone Preserve and yet to be finally named trail to the top of Mount Dean Stone. And this work was just completed yesterday, but rerouting two large sections of the Sunlight Trail, as well as implementing fencing along the road, resurfacing the Peary Park Trail, you can see in the bottom photo here, as well as fencing along the newly paved and expanded Riverside Trail through Toole Park. We have a natural resource functional work team that really works to protect what makes our conservation lands special. So this team is implementing all of our natural resource priorities, maintaining the natural resource values and wildlife habitat quality, and working to restore degraded or impacted areas, however those impacts occur. And we have three staff currently in this team, a natural resource focused maintenance technician assistant and worker who are really working towards implementing an integrated invasive species treatment and control approach, implementing wild and forestry management, wildlife habitat improvement, and implementing conservation actions for rare and sensitive species, including Missoula phlox, which is endemic and only known to occur on our North Hills. We also have a plant propagation and restoration maintenance technician assistant. And as Morgan alluded to, this person runs our greenhouse. They collect seed and grow out all the plants we need for our in-house restoration actions. They help to plan restoration actions and coordinate with project partners. And the direction we've been moving in now is providing seed and plants to other city departments with wildland restoration needs. So making sure that we can provide the right plant in the right place at the right time that will be climate resilient and last on the landscape. And so again, some of the projects that this team has been working on this year include targeted weed spraying throughout the system, as Morgan mentioned and covered, further implementing restoration actions at the Rattlesnake Dam, the Toole Park trail expansion restoration plantings on the river side of the trail, as well as, and this is coming up in a few weeks, we will be reseeding the burn area that occurred in July in the North Hills. And lastly, and this is really new for us, the program support functional work team. And again, this team is essential to improving our management over time, as well as educating users and residents. So this team supports all aspects of our program's administrative needs, provides feedback and input on the efficacy of all of our maintenance actions and our management decisions, and is integral to implementing an adaptive management approach. So this includes our conservation land specialist, who really focuses on program level data collection and management, working on writing and developing our integrated management plans for our new properties, focusing on public outreach and education, primarily utilizing Engage Missoula as a platform, and coordinating volunteer and partner efforts. We also have a research and monitoring coordinator. Again, occasionally we have a seasonal assistant to assist that person, who focuses on collecting and analyzing monitoring data out on our lands, mapping special resources of concern on the properties, implementing new property inventories, assessing the efficacy of our maintenance actions, again, and management decisions, and helping us learn from our prior actions in order to implement better, more appropriate decisions in the future. And you can see, if anybody has been up on the new Dean Stone property, we have these nice trail maps that were put out. These are temporary. There will be final trail maps produced next year. And then we're very close to actually rolling these out. They just came back from production about 2 weeks ago. We have brand new welcome to conservation land signs, as well as a whole suite of updated signage for our entire system. Lastly, I wanted to touch on the strategic use of contracted services. So a few recent projects we utilized this year, and one of which Parks and Conservation and Council was aware of, is the utilization of contractors for forest health thinning projects on Mount Jumbo and Marshall Canyon, really to maintain wildlife habitat quality and reduce wildfire risk. So this is a total of 73 acres. If you happen to be up in the Rattlesnake in the last few months, you probably heard the chainsaws running pretty constantly. This is what this looks like now. We were up here in the spring within the bid tour, and you could not see through this area. So it's a huge difference in the ability to maintain wildlife habitat quality and reduce wildfire risk. We've also been utilizing 2 contractors who are confident in their ability to identify the appropriate noxious weed species to spray primarily new invaders and known noxious weed species, focusing on our roads and trail corridors on park preserves. And in total, they sprayed on 12 conservation lands properties this year. And then lastly, we have been strategically using Montana Conservation Corps crew, and we actually have a 5-person crew here as we speak to assist with natural resource and recreation needs. And with the end of this hitch, we'll have an additional 45 person days. We may even have the opportunity for a few more days in late October. We have a few additional planned projects, including more forest thinning efforts on Jumbo, Sentinel, and Dean Stone, expanded weed spraying of our existing properties, again, throughout the system, focusing on broad application based on the needs and species present on each property. And then we also have plans to develop an interpretive plan and standard design template for all of our future signage, which will be deployed on informational kiosks throughout the system. We really wanted to highlight all of the existing partnerships that we have. And I do want to mention that Conservation Lands has active projects working with every single department, division,
agency, and nonprofit shown on this slide. So many city departments and divisions, especially with our public works, public safety. We have many outside agencies in the community and throughout the state that we're working with. And then also we have many community-based nonprofits in the Valley that we have active and collaborative projects on. A few exciting projects coming up in the next 2 years from our shop include developing a comprehensive management plan for the Bluebird property. This is in the Grant Creek / North Hills area. And we're going to be developing a comprehensive management plan, including focusing on natural resource conservation and recreation access. And again, really exciting for the public is that there will be an opportunity to open up potentially 245 acres of city fee land and an additional 300 acres of allied waste conservation easement adjacent to city fee land to passive recreation trail access. We're going to be addressing some issues we have on Mount Jumbo in and around the Lincoln Hills trailhead area. So we're aware of many user-created trails that are impacting wildlife habitat quality and adjacent private property issues. And so the goals are to reduce user conflict, increase user enjoyment, and reduce impacts to elk habitat and neighboring property owners. And this is going to tier off of the existing conservation lands management plan and our existing forest management plan. We are just about to jump into a master plan development for the Fort Missoula Regional Park Ponds property. And then again, this is going to be engaging the public and many community partners to create a master plan for the area to guide future implementation. And we want to really focus on protecting the existing natural values, as well as allowing public access for nature-based recreation. And then lastly, focusing on, again, developing a comprehensive management plan for the Clark Fork Islands area. This is south of the wastewater plant and the compost facility, to develop a comprehensive management plan. And again, develop additional access points, allow additional public access, and maintain and restore our natural values. And throughout all these programs, we're really focusing on implementing projects that further broad city goals. We have many broad goals in the city, but these include natural and cultural resource conservation, focusing on climate resiliency and green infrastructure construction and installation, public access and safety on our lands, providing public health opportunities through enhanced recreation, focusing on equity and inclusion by making sure that we're working in all neighborhoods throughout the system, not just in one that has the majority of lands, fostering a sense of place for all Missoulians, and land conservation by targeting cornerstone properties in the community that have been identified in prior planning projects. And so all of these efforts can only happen by an exchange of experience and information between conservation land staff and other city departments and outside partners. So we're very happy to maintain the existing partnerships that we have and expand them further. We do acknowledge that there's a need for increased public outreach and engagement through additional volunteer opportunities. And we really hope to develop a future ambassador program to increase the number of responsible users and advocates out on the land. With that, I'll pass it back to Morgan.
Yeah, and Brian, did you have a quick question?
I'll wait till the end, Morgan. Thanks.
Okay.
Morgan, do you want to share your screen again?
Yeah, I'm popping back over there. Oop. All right. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jeff. I think I want to end with just we've talked a lot about budget growth and capacity growth. I want to talk a little bit about just our overall system growth as well. One thing I can definitely say, just sitting back and listening to Jeff, it's really a bit heartwarming as someone that has been in this conservation lands management role for a while, where, oftentimes pulling together a project like thinning on Jumbo requires writing grants and 2 years of prep time. Being able to just quickly move forward, having that increased capacity to build those partnerships and do that long range planning. We're definitely no longer a one-man show. We've got a lot of men and women working towards all the plans that we've adopted as a community. So when we look at system growth, this was a map from our 2010 Conservation Lands Management Plan. And this was what the system looked like when we passed that plan. We had about 35, almost just under 3,600 acres of properties. We, in that plan, set management goals for 3 main categories of property: park preserves, which are the big red areas that you see here. That's where you can really think habitat restoration, preservation, nature first with passive recreation. Our public natural areas that certainly do have native habitats that we work to protect and preserve, but also have higher levels of development and use. And then urban parklands with special resources present, where we do have much higher levels of use and infrastructure, but of course have individual special resources that also need to be managed. We also set a funding goal of $120 per acre for our park preserves in that when we developed that plan and adopted that plan in 2010. A lot's changed since then. In general, the system has grown by about 40%. We are now just shy of 5,000 acres. We're like one land acquisition away from 5,000 acres. You know, that the way that those lands have come on have not been equal. We've seen about a 57% increase in coniferous forests, almost a 300% increase in our amount of riparian areas that we're managing, and about 20% increase in our grasslands. This is significant because, quite honestly, it costs a little bit more to manage trees than it does to manage grasslands. You're going to have to deal with a lot more issues in coniferous forests and in our active flooding riparian areas. We've also had differing levels of growth within our types of properties. We've had a 30% increase in our park preserves. Some of the big ones have been out here at the Clark Fork Islands, Tower Street, Mount Dean Stone here in the South Hills, and then also the addition of the Rattlesnake Reservoir site. We've had only about a 4% increase in our natural areas, so not a big increase there. Most of it is out at Fort Missoula Regional Park and our CCC Prairie. And we've had about a 41% increase in our urban parklands with special resources. The biggest increase is probably West Broadway Island out there off of by the California Street Bridge. We also, as Jeff alluded to, have several new properties that we have not quite determined what category they're going to be in. We've got Fort Missoula Natural Ponds, which is a 90-acre site here at the base of McCauley Butte, the Bluebird property here in Grant Creek, and then obviously we're in a lease with an option to buy Marshall Mountain. We still have the same funding goal for park preserves. It's still $120 per acre, but when you adjust that for inflation, obviously we've had some inflation since 2010, that brings us up to about $151 in today's dollars. If we really focus in on the difference and change in types of park type, I think it's important to note that right now, if we were able to really do just quick back of the napkin math, with the conservation and stewardship mill levy, we're funded at about $226 per acre. I can pretty much say comfortably, we've got our park preserves funded. You know, managing those park preserves where all your infrastructure is at the trailhead and it's really just dirt trails and native habitats beyond that, we've got those funded right now. We still have a huge backlog of deferred maintenance. The majority, over half of our trail system, 50 plus miles, we didn't build, they just got walked in over time. We still have to bring those up to standards. We still have to get our weeds under control. We still have a bunch of forestry issues, but we have the money to do that. We just need time to implement it. Our new park preserves that we're bringing on are built to our standards. They're actually they cost much less to maintain because they're built right and we build them with thought. We take time to plan. Our functional work teams are greatly increasing our efficiency and our effectiveness. Overall, our park preserves, we're doing pretty well. Some of the things that we're working with now are how we develop our public natural areas, our urban parklands with special resources, and of course, those 375 acres of undetermined land that we're going to be creating plans for in this winter and through next year. As we add more specialty types of infrastructure and more specialty types of parks to our system, we've got to consider those long-term maintenance impacts and develop those appropriate funding strategies. And that's certainly something that we're working on. And you've heard me say this before, it's cheaper to manage 11 acres on Mount Jumbo or Sentinel than it is to manage 11 acres of Bancroft Ponds Park. High use, lots of signage, lots of infrastructure. We're probably managing $1,000 or $1,500 an acre for something like Bancroft Ponds. As we start to add other infrastructure and new types of properties, it's a different funding model, and we still need to develop those funding strategies, and that's something that we're actively doing. It's important to note, though, as we move into our planning and our budgets, and we look at new sustainable models to manage these lands, that we're really answering to our residents. And what we're doing is trying to meet goals that have been set in publicly adopted plans. So what do our residents want? Well, you guys talk to them all the time. Just as well as me. We've got statistically valid surveys. We've got adopted plans. We got folks that come out for open houses. On our conservation lands management system, we hear consistently, folks want to be able to connect with nature. They want good outdoor educational opportunities. They want volunteer opportunities to give back to the lands that they love so much. They want cultural preservation. They want specialty recreational amenities. And so whether that's specialty bike trails or folk courses or sustainable river access points or ADA compliant trails or ways for folks with mobility issues to connect on the lands that they weren't able to do. This is what we hear again and again and again, and we've not been able to really provide on our conservation land system. They also want to have more kids programming, and they want to have more outdoor venues to recreate in and to gather in. And these are things that we're certainly seeing in the last 2 years as folks are flocking to these lands and flocking to outdoor spaces. And, I don't think I'm alone being thankful that we live where we live during this pandemic. I mean, we have a lot of good amenities in our back door, and we certainly are going to be improving them for our public in years to come. So again, I guess in closing, we've got a lot more planning going on. We've got a lot of new projects coming forward. We are going to be developing those funding strategies. I think there's a lot of creative ways to do it, and we'll certainly be keeping you guys apprised of it and involving you in that process. So with that, I will end it. And I think we do still hopefully have time for questions. I'm going to figure out how to quit the screen sharing. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff and Morgan. This is always, the conservation lands presentations are always one of my favorite presentations that we see every year. And I really appreciate the detailed example of how really a relatively small amount of funding from the conservation levy is leveraged to really have a giant impact on our community. I know Brian has a question, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thanks. I think I'm getting sentimental as I see my council tenure ending, and I think back 8 years ago, and I chaired parks for a while there. And so first off, I want to say really clearly, thank you. Excellent presentation, both of you. One of the best I've seen, frankly. And as a report, this is a little bit sort of cold, but as a report on sort of return on investment, if you will, it provides a lot of just fantastic information about the resources and activities that we have now, we've invested in, and what they're doing. And so to that point, I hope that we can get this promoted on Engage Missoula. This is a report to the public that should be shared widely. I'm sure I am not alone on council. I would point to this to constituents, to a bunch of people that I'm in communication with on a regular basis, and I would highlight certain parts and stuff like that. So I hope genuinely that we can get this posted. It would be a fantastic, like I said, report to the public about the return on the investments that the public has made here. I am sure this will come as no surprise. The thing that we hear about a lot, and I certainly hear about it in Heidi Ward 1, is weeds, and particularly knapweed in Jumbo, North Hills. And as someone who has spent a lot of time spraying and pulling knapweed personally on property that we have, I'm familiar with this. So if there's anything more on that particular topic, you guys did, it was addressed in the presentation. I would offer that perhaps there is a slide missing that is some more detailed information about what exactly is happening there in the North Hills and stuff. I think people would like to know that. And I know that things are happening. It's a difficult process to convey to people sort of what's going on and maybe what expectations for change over time. And I know you guys hear about this, but it's the one thing amidst the abundance of riches we have that continues to be an issue, and it's an understandable and challenging issue. So don't know if you want to speak to that anymore, but I hope we can get this out, posted, and maybe if there's more detailed information on that particular topic, I think that'd be welcome.
Yeah, for sure. And we can definitely get it posted. Just a quick answer. I think one thing we've let people know is that we were fully expecting to be completely staffed up over a year ago. And, this season is the first season that we have full staff and we have those contracted services to actually do that work that you talked about. And so I think that's a lot of confusion in the public because they passed this mill levy in 2018 and they're like, where are the results? Well, you can't just start on year one and throw an additional $500,000 at the ground. And so we have, this is year one of actually full implementation. We will have a lot more detail. Jeff and I talked a lot about this. Honestly, the presentation was just getting a little long. We will have that season end presentation later this winter, which will tell you exactly what we did to address those problems and exactly what we're implementing next year to address those issues. And we're certainly aware of them.
Thanks, Morgan. Quick follow-up, Heidi. And I just want to say, and again, fantastic presentation. One of the things that's really, I hope people appreciate, thinking back to 8 years ago, you have consistently reported, Morgan, on that per acre number of, dollars, what we needed and what was necessary, where we were. And it's great to see, because I can remember what that level was, 8 years ago and before. And what has happened and the investment that the public's made and the city has made in getting that to the level. And it's the last part of your presentation, but that's one of the things that I'll be highlighting to folks. So great work.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from council? Nope, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So I want to skip back just to the administrative business on our agenda. We have a full quorum, or we have quorum now, and I just wanted to point out for the record that Heather and Jesse were stuck in the attendees room, and that Mirta and Stacy joined us. I'm sure Karina's got that written down. So I just want to make sure that we'll approve the minutes if there are no objections, and also really quickly call for public comments on non-agenda items. I skipped over that, and if we don't, I don't see any hands going up, so we'll go ahead and go on to our last agenda item. So I'll turn it over to Neil.
Thanks, Heidi. I'm Neil Miner. I'm the Parks and Trails Design Development Manager for Parks and Recreation. I'm bringing the much anticipated Waterworks Trail Construction Services contract for you all to see. I have a small presentation. Let me see if I can't get it up. So this is, if you recall, over the years, we've been trying to get this designed and planned. We started a engineering contract. Last December, we approved it for design of the trailhead and the road, which is currently known as Minkler Loop. The trailhead is one of our most used trails for conservation lands, located really close to downtown in Greeno Park. The construction documents were completed and we bid the project in August. We got 3 bids, which we're really excited about. We bid it for, after the meeting with the contractors, they all said that they were overwhelmed this season. So we bid it for a spring construction date. Trying to get, as everyone knows, the very volatile bidding climate. And so we were really excited to get on the books really early for next spring. We got some pretty good numbers back. The project is off of Greeno Drive. It includes the Minkler Loop, which would have an access to the adjacent private property, which is currently on the market, has an approved PUD right now. And that was that development agreement that council approved last, I believe, November. And then they would come around onto what is Missoula Water property and have the parking lot. Right now, it's kind of informal. I'll say it's an informal parking lot on what is Minkler Loop Road, which with horrible turnarounds, steep grades, no shoulders, gravel every time it rains, gravel washing down Greeno Drive. And so this would bring a 40-car parking lot. We have room for fire truck turnaround that was required. Turnaround, we have rainwater or stormwater, like rain gardens to collect the water off the parking lot and infiltrate into the ground. And then we have a trailhead. I'll bring up another plan. We also have a half-mile universally accessible trail, which is really exciting in our area. We have some universal access trails in the area, but we don't have anything that gets you to like a really viewpoint. And so this gets you, if no one's walked up here, the viewpoint right here is where a lot of the old archival photos from Missoula are taken. So like you get up here and you notice that the photo of Greeno Mansion or the Interstate 90 being built coming across Missoula, or all these photos are taken from this aspect, and you have views of Stewart Peak and Chappaqua and Lolo Peak and basically 360-degree views. It's a really great area, and so having a half-mile universally accessible trail is going to be pretty exciting. A little more detail of the parking lot. We'll have some benches, a kiosk with rules and regulations, and a map. A lot of our current conservation lands maps are pretty outdated in our system, so working on upgrading those. The kiosk would be really similar to the one at the Froelich Trailhead, which is on Orange Street and I-90 for the North Hills. We have a area for a future portalet enclosure if that's needed, some bike racks, and then the trail kind of does a loop, the universally accessible trail. Currently, the current trail serving Waterworks goes up kind of the fence line. It's really steep and rocky. We'll bring that and have that kind of switch back right here and go up, and so it'll be a better grade right off the start, more sustainable for maintenance. And so kind of short presentation. I'm going to skip ahead one more slide. I kind of got these out of order. Our funding sources it is a CIP project. The funding sources were identified as a 2018 general obligation open space bond for $170,000. We did receive a $50,000 recreational trails program grant from state parks. BARSA for the public road, the Minkler Loop Road, the gas tax, we have $388,000. Missoula Water contribution was $65,000. This kind of came back over. I think I am time-wise exactly the same as Brian. So I've been here about 8 years. As long as I've been here, there's been a negotiation with Mountain Water at the time to exchange land for a water tank on the Jumbo Saddle for a parking lot on this property. And so it's kind of had some starts and stops. And so throughout that whole process is contributions kind of snowballed up there. It's always been kind of consistent that they would help us build the trail, and this is kind of what was negotiated. And then the park impact fees, we just got approved for some park impact fees for $125,000 for the increase in service. That fund also includes the engineering contract that we have for DJNA, which was approved, like I said, last December, of $125,000, or it was a not to exceed amount of $125,000. So it has some construction services in that contract. And so basically the recommended motion that is from the referral is here.
All right. Thank you, Neil. Brian?
Thanks, Neil. It would be my pleasure to make the recommended motion.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this item? No. All right. We'll take a public comment on this motion. And I don't see anyone raising their hands. So we'll go ahead. I just briefly want to say that I am so excited for this to happen. And this is a trailhead that is incredibly underparked, as in there are so many cars here. It's so highly used and it's a mess at the trailhead, and I'm really excited for this to be something that's easier to use, easier to access, and that everyone in our community can eventually use this really valuable resource. So I guess with that, if there's no other comments, let's see, I see a hand now. Oh, nope, I just didn't take Brian's down. So I guess we'll, oh wait.
I put it up.
Oh, you did, okay. I'll go back.
I was trying to keep myself to a word limit today, and I figure I exceeded it talking to Morgan and Jeff, but I mean, I'm a short timer, so ditto to everything Heidi said. Can't wait to see this happen. And I specifically wanted to bring attention, and I'm really appreciate you including it and making it so clear, Neil, about the combination of funding sources. So I think really important for people to appreciate that. And this is just going to be a fantastic upgrade. So thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, I guess with that, we'll take a vote on this. Karina?
Anderson?
Yes.
Anderson votes yes. Becerra?
Yes.
Becerra votes yes. Contos?
Yes.
Contos votes yes. Harp?
Yes.
Harp votes yes. Hess?
Yes.
Hess votes yes. Jones?
Yes.
Jones votes yes. Ramos?
Yes.
Ramos votes yes. Vaseka? Sandra? I don't hear
Yes.
Sandra.
Sorry
Oh,
about
yep,
that.
there she is. Okay. Von Lossberg?
Yes.
Von Lossberg votes yes. West?
Yes.
West votes yes. That is 10 yeses and no nos.
All right. And that was the last item on our agenda. And so, Morgan, I think you could have gone a little longer because we've got a couple minutes left. So, and we'll be adjourned.
Maybe Brian wants to say something else?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
I do appreciate all your interest in this project, and yeah, like Heidi mentioned, it's much used. And I think just in closing, we did really look at how many parking spaces the North Hills could actually sustain and whether we were over the carrying capacity of the land, and that's kind of why we ended up at the 40 parking spaces. You know, with the I think Jeff mentioned the flocks up there and everything. So I think we have a good balance of providing more spaces, but also not overloading the land. So it was a careful balance. So I appreciate everyone's interest.
All right. Bye, guys.
Take care.